Welcome to BitBoy Crypto. My name is Ben, and in this video, we're on location at CleanSpark, one of the biggest Bitcoin miners in the United States. It's a new day for Bitcoin as the hash rate is spreading out across the world, and America is thankfully seizing this opportunity. I sat down with the CEO of CleanSpark, Zack Bradford, and other members of his team to talk about Bitcoin, mining, and how it's not only empowering the next stage of economic development in the US, but also innovating the next generation of job creation. Let's get it. What's your name and what do you do at CleanSpark?
I'm Zack Bradford, CEO and President at CleanSpark.
I hear you have a background in finance, rumors in the trees. So how do you think your background in finance, helped in your transition in co-founding CleanSpark?
Great question. So I was actually the CFO before I became the CEO in 2019. And so background CPA, always been into the numbers, but I've always been in the numbers for the business reasons. I don't think I ever identified as your typical accountant, right? The guy that just loves it to love it. For me, it was all about the why, what makes the world go round in business. And so, the reason that it made sense to get involved in Bitcoin mining is when you step back and you look at one, the ROIs make sense, but also what does the future of money really look like? And that's Bitcoin and energy. And so you have to kind of go back in time in our story to recognize what got us from point A to point B. And that was, we're in this to try and we wanted to make the world a better place through renewables and things like that on the energy side, but finding that nobody wanted to pay for it. And so finding a better way to try and change the world for the better, we really found that in Bitcoin.
In America, we used to build things, and we're building things again now because of Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining is about infrastructure. It's the infrastructure of the new economy. It's the infrastructure of the future. What we're doing right now with Bitcoin mining is we're building infrastructure, and this is what's behind Bitcoin. So people don't always see this.
When it comes to the environment, we get a lot of misinformation, intentional misinformation, in my opinion. We call that, FUD in crypto. Can you kind of explain what environmental FUD is, in your opinion, in the world of crypto?
Are there reasons for people to be concerned specifically about Bitcoin mining? I think there are bad actors. That's true of anything, right? Yeah. For the most part, though, as I was reading the white paper on the way here, and he says honesty, or they say honesty over and over and over again in that white paper. It's honest nodes, honest, right? It's a trustless system, but it still depends on honesty. And we can do this honestly. We can be forthright about the energy we're consuming, where we're consuming it, how we're consuming it, and what we're doing to improve that in this country.
When I look at Bitcoin mining, it's really cool because in order for Bitcoin to even exist, something has to mint it. So we have computers that are communicating, they're solving this puzzle in the blockchain, and they're creating value. So people have an opportunity to use it as a store of value or to actually use it as a digital currency.
I guess let's go back a little bit further. Bitcoin was founded, obviously, 2009, white paper 2008. When did you come into the world of Bitcoin?
I actually got first introduced it would have been early 2020, I think, is when it was. Actually, on the energy side, we went and visited a data center in College Park. We were there to talk about solar and batteries and renewables and trying to get more energy efficiency into a data center. Little did I know I was walking into what would become our future when we walked in and saw all these machines humming away, and they explained what they did was Bitcoin mining. This crazy thing called a pandemic happens, and next thing you know, point A to point B happens. Plenty of time to study and learn more. Quickly became a convert to Bitcoin mining. Led to me walking into the boardroom and to a bunch of directors who thought I was crazy at the moment and said, "Hey, I know we've been going down a certain path, but we absolutely have to get involved, and we need to acquire this data center instead of doing an energy project." So took a minute to get them to come around, but that's where we started.
If you were to kind of summarize why you started CleanSpark as a company, because there was a transition to get CleanSpark to Bitcoin mining, but with the renewable energy sources and trying to help the environment and just good for the world, what was your intention in founding the company?
Our goal was we were going to change the world. The grid we live in, that was really what our software did, is it interacted with the grid. Our grid's incredibly fragile in this country, and nobody wants to pay for it. That's what led to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is positioned in the world to pay for the energy infrastructure upgrades. So what better way to do it but take a true market-based approach to adding value to the grid, adding value to, it's not just us that gets the value, it's the neighborhoods surrounding us that got upgraded power lines when we paid for the power lines to be run from a facility like this. So really, we started this to try and better not only the green energy, but better the grid and all of these things. And that's why, sometimes people say, hey, so are you done being in the energy business? And we say, we're still in it. It just comes in a different form. We are storing the value of the energy, not in batteries, but we're storing it in Bitcoin.
Man, I like that. That's good stuff right there, because it really is so true that so much is made about Bitcoin and the environment. And it's like, no, that is the answer. And people don't even see it. It's right there in front of them. Let's talk about Bitcoin mining in America. Obviously, this has been a hot topic. About a year ago, Elon Musk decided that he was going to slam the market and say, Tesla's no longer accepting Bitcoin because I just found this out. It's bad for the environment, I think. That moment going forward has led to kind of the opening of the Pandora's box of Bitcoin mining in America. I know it's already going on here. We've seen the Chinese hash rate drop pretty dramatically. We've seen Texas make big pushes. Obviously here in Georgia, the #1 Bitcoin mining state in terms of hash rate. Where do you see the importance for America to really take hold of Bitcoin mining and be a leader?
Yeah, well, I think that what you said there, being a leader, is really important because, Bitcoin mining, if it is centralized in governments and areas where the government isn't going to walk in and just take control, that's good for the Bitcoin network, right? That's healthy for the Bitcoin network. So I think, one, it's important that it does take a lead. What does that look like? I think that the U.S. is uniquely positioned from a capitalist market point of view to create the right incentives to make this happen. But also, we in this country, we basically make choices in the trade-offs. We can either self-govern or we can be governed. And I think that the one good thing that came from the statements that Elon made is it became a catalyst where people made that decision in advance to self-govern, to try and make better choices about where they locate, whether that's the state they locate in, because the state is supportive from a business point of view, whether it's the energy sources that they chose, being green or clean or non-carbon, which is what drove us to Georgia in particular. But, all of these things became a catalyst where it shows that when, individuals are given freedom to make choices, which happens here in this country in particular, people generally make the right ones. So I think that this is the right place to set up a base camp. I think we need to really own that and be leaders, because this is a place that will always keep the Bitcoin network secure when it's got fertile ground to grow on.
Yeah. What are some things about the Georgia, like the Atlanta area, the Georgia area, that has made things friendly for CleanSpark?
We work really closely with our partners here in Gwinnett County, Norcross specifically. They are some of the warmest, kindest, easy to work with people I have ever worked with in all my career.
Southern hospitality is a real thing.
It's a real thing. So that's one of the reasons. It's a very business-friendly state. And we love it here.
Yeah. What do you guys do here in the Atlanta area for PR?
Well, we get a lot of opportunities where the press will just reach out to us because they'll see a lot of promotions that we have. They'll see that we're in the news, we're growing, we're a public company, which is very helpful. So it's really nice because we'll have a lot of publications, local trade publications, that will reach out, and we'll prep our team that are already here, or we'll send out a PR person to help represent and kind of make that logistical transition and communicate on our behalf, which is really cool.
Where do you see where things switch from being just business friendly to where in America we could kind of say it is now Bitcoin mining friendly? What kind of crypto laws and regulation do we have to look forward to that would make this more well received from the general public?
I think off the top of my head, we want to make sure that laws protect the ability of anyone in the crypto space to be able to innovate, to understand new ways of doing this, to explore those new ways and move those forward. Yeah. Georgia's part of that. There are other states in this country that maybe aren't actually as progressive on Bitcoin mining as we'd like them to be. We haven't experienced any of those issues, but we do work closely with our partners. We're a member of the Chamber of Digital Commerce. We've worked closely with them. If you've probably noticed, there's been a law in New York that's moving its way along that would put a moratorium essentially on new Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
We're fortunate because of our background. We have a strong renewable focus. So we do some mining in upstate New York, and it's all renewable.
So obviously, we're located in Georgia. Your facilities here are located in Georgia. You've got some other offices, but the facilities are here. So you've seen a big advantage, obviously, to do them here and do them fairly close to each other. What does Georgia have that some of the other states don't have? Because I was shocked by this. I didn't know we had kind of friendly laws around environment and energy and Bitcoin mining. I don't know if there are laws specific, but we just don't have the anti-laws, I guess might be a good way to say it. What made you guys choose Georgia?
Yeah, general sense, business-friendly state, real business-friendly state, but also the power system, is fairly easy to navigate from a utility point of view. You really have Georgia Power, and then you have all the cities that are supported by MEAG. But behind the scenes, what really attracted us here is the nuclear power that Georgia is one of the very few states still embracing. And again, right now we're about 95% carbon-free mining at the source, and the nuclear power is a big part of that. We of course have hydro, up in New York State, but nuclear power, we think is really important. My opinions on nuclear is we kind of took a left turn, 20, 30 years ago when we saw some issues with that. Technology's improved so much. And you look at all the electric vehicles that are going to come around, let alone all the power that the Bitcoin miners like us want to use. How is that going to work? And you really need something that's this really big base load source. So we actually believe that as part of being here, hopefully we're casting our vote in the form of dollars or Bitcoin, and will hopefully lead to more nuclear being built in this country. We think it's really important, and that's what attracted us to Georgia. And also little known is from a capacity point of view, Georgia's the 7th largest state out of 50 for solar power. So as much as it doesn't get any credit, there's a lot of solar in the state too.
In the South, they say we're last in everything. That's what they say. We're not.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's really interesting. So what do you think the future is for mining in Georgia? Do you think Georgia will continue to be the top state for hash rate, or do you kind of see Texas catching it at some point just due to its size?
I think Texas will catch because also they're making a really hard push. But yeah, there's just so much more space, right? So when you're have 4 times as much land mass, it would make sense to catch up. Now, I think Georgia is positioned to hold its place, and it's just going to come down to, I think Texas actually is going to get a little crowded. We are making a big move in Texas, but I think that the reasons people are going to Texas are going to start to slow down inside the next 3 or 4 years, and then places like Georgia will still be well positioned because they're set up. There's another nuclear plant coming online, or supposed to be coming online. I know it's always delayed, in the next 6 months to a year, and all that capacity, hopefully it's all going to Bitcoin mining.
So how big is CleanSpark in the United States? So we've got the 2 facilities here. I know you location in Las Vegas. What does that look like across the country right now?
We've got offices, 2 data centers here in Georgia. We co-locate out of a facility up in New York. We have offices in Nevada and also in San Diego right now. We just recently announced we're going to be moving into Texas in a big way also. So what that looks like...
Why don't you take my Georgia hash rate?
We're not going anywhere. We're going to keep building. So, but yeah, no, most of our hash rate is coming out of Georgia right now. We're currently about the 6th largest publicly traded miner in the country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're really trying to grow. We have our sights set, to be in the top 5 in the very near term. Processing power, a little over 2.4 right now, and that really what that equates to is about 10 Bitcoin a day at current difficulty. Oh, wow. So, we're growing, we're growing fast. We have our sights.
Bank.
Yeah, we're doing well.
Well, 10 Bitcoin today isn't worth what 10 Bitcoin? What? Well, I guess it's still worth 10 Bitcoin, right?
Yes, it sure is. I like the way you're thinking on that. Yeah. But yeah, our goal is to be about 3 times bigger by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So.
What percentage of the hash rate do you think that you guys control right now?
We're about 2.4 exahash. Hash rate right now is down a little bit to about 190, so a little over 1% is what we're doing right now globally.
there's many different ways to actually run a mining operation, right? I mean, ultimately, you're solving the math problem. It's a very simple way to look at it. You're bringing the Bitcoin into the supply, but the process, how you get there, varies quite widely.
It does.
And for you guys here at the two facilities in Atlanta, you actually do it opposite ways. You kind of want to talk about the two different ways that you guys are mining Bitcoin between the two facilities.
Yep. So here in Norcross, we're doing immersion cooling. So you can see the technicians here, they're preparing these miners for immersion. So they're removing the fans, they're removing the power supply fans. That allows the liquid to flow through and cool the machine better. So these, once they're ready, they go into a tank that's filled with a synthetic oil. It's non-conductive. That oil is circulated through pumps that goes through a chilling system where there's a heat exchanger that cools that oil down. So it's a closed loop system, keeps the miners running at a very stable temperature. The College Park location is air cooled. So there, fans are on. We put those inside of like something like a shipping container. We have two actually types of containers there. We have a passive type that uses a evaporative cooling water wall. So the air coming into that is cooled down. The fans on the miners themselves is what pulls that air in and exhausts out the other side. Yeah. We have some kind of version 2 containers that we have that have giant exhaust fans. So there's no water wall, it's just the miners themselves bringing that air in, and then the exhaust fans force that hot air out, and it's just constantly moving to keep it. So a couple of different ways to do it. Advantages to both, disadvantages to both.
So yeah, this is immersion cooling here at our data center. You know, these tanks, there are test tanks. We're testing out different kind of overclocking. But, you know, it's pretty simple. We fill them full of the S19s. It sits in the fluid. The fluid is, think of it as mineral oil.
Yeah.
With additives inside. So the name of the game when it comes to Bitcoin mining is about heat transfer. Getting heat off the chips so the chips can perform as well as they can. Immersion cooling is really going to be the future of Bitcoin mining, in my opinion, because it's a lot more efficient. But also, you listen right now, and it's quiet. It's an easy environment, but the temperatures are going to stay consistent.
Well, when I was a kid, we didn't want to put our computers in the bathtub.
Right? It was always a good idea. Yeah. Now, best thing you can do.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, so how it works is, you know, the oil, it actually just circulates from the tank, comes down into the middle, goes through the heat exchanger and back up. But what we're doing is we're running through these longer black pipes water. So hot water goes out, cool water comes in, just like a radiator. Yeah. The coils run next to each other in parallel. So cold water by heat transfer cools down the oil, comes back up, starts the cycle again. So we're not running oil, you know, yards out, and we're also have a closed loop system. So there's no water waste that happens. The water just goes top to bottom, back and forth all day long, 24/7. So
now, what I think is interesting is, you know, I've seen viral TikToks where they show these really cool, like, water miners, and they're like flashing, got neon lights. This is the real work.
This
Bitcoin
is the real
mining
work
right here.
Yeah,
it's dirty water.
Yeah, it's industrial. So yeah, it's just hot fluid that cycles back and forth. There's no neon lights. There's nothing flashy. You know, we have tanks that you know, are functional. Yeah. Function over looks, really.
Well, you know, the Bitcoin's not going to mine itself.
It's true, exactly. So this one right here, you know, newer fluid, so you can see a little bit more inside it. But if you look down inside, what we've done is, you know, these things come air cooled. They come covered in fans and all kinds of stuff. That's all been taken off. So our goal is, of course, whatever's the quickest to flow the fluid through, so you can look right down inside and see where the magic happens.
Let's talk about the hash rate real quick, because when it comes to the, you know, some of the bigger people out there that make crypto content around fundamentals of Bitcoin and around the metrics and the on-chain data, you know, they love to talk about things that traditionally see high prices coupled with them, right? Yeah. So hash rate record highs has usually correlated along with Bitcoin price highs. But we haven't seen that. No. You know, in the last year, we've actually seen the price dropping and the hash rate, you know, continuing to go up. What is hash rate, if you were to just kind of give a real simple explanation, and why is it important to Bitcoin, and does it affect the price?
Yeah. So hash rate, of course, is processing power. So that means, again, to secure the hash rate, we're making guesses to solve equations, put it in perspective, 1 exahash is a quintillion transactions a second, and we do 2.4 of that. So 2.4 quintillion transactions a second is what our machines are doing. They are trying to guess the answer to a question that is, ultimately.
A quintillion right above a quadrillion.
I actually don't know the answer to that.
I think that's actually true. Somebody check that.
There you go.
Somebody check
Somebody
that.
should check that. Yeah. But yeah, ton of transactions. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is solve the cryptographic puzzle, right? That then validates all the transactions. One miner validates it, then another miner validates it. That's where we validate it in general. So without the hash rate and the processing power out there, the blockchain doesn't exist. That's what it is. Now, why is it important it goes higher? That indicates two things. One, that there's more processing power, but it indicates security. In theory, that's more machines that are up. One, it's more, that's a whole lot of machines that would have to go offline for the Bitcoin to go offline. But also, all those machines are in separate places under different control, and it makes it so the 51% attack is, so much more less likely today than it ever was, back in 2010 or something, right?
When it comes to the future of green energy and green jobs, because that's a big aspect of all this, where do you see that going?
Honestly, I think sky's the limit, really. I know one of the big projects that we have coming up is looking to add more solar here. So again, there's going to be opportunity there. I know that's something that we have our bones in, so I think a lot of that we'll be looking to do in-house. But having that as part that we can add and speak to, I know a lot of people are very passionate about that, so being able to kind of see that with immersion technology, solar power, I think one thing, hopefully, other companies can kind of see what it is that we're doing and look at that as potentially a model to kind of duplicate, and hopefully the industry as a whole start shifting in that area, and everybody's focusing on renewable and ways that we can do it that's going to help the environment as well.
We hear about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but mining it is different. I noticed that we're doing this thing of educating and informing. We're working with local businesses, we're working with the community, we're doing community outreach, we're teaching people, which helps to kind of shape that narrative and to be more in control of it. When we talk about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, some people just consider it to be too technical, or it's confusing, or it's overwhelming, and they just don't understand it. So it's just trying to make it more of something that anyone can understand.
So what you guys are doing here is awesome, business perspective. What do you think CleanSpark is doing, or what do you know of that you guys are doing that is kind of helping like the next generation of Bitcoin miners or developers or people wanting to get into crypto? How are you enabling the future of crypto through what you're doing here?
Yeah, so we're approaching it in two ways. One, internal development inside the company, but also outside the company. I'll address the outside first. So we have actually sponsored a couple scholarships recently at a technical university. We're trying to attract new talent into the space. People, everybody's heard about it now. Everybody watches YouTube channels like yours, or gets content from wherever they get it. But you go to a university and you say, hey, I really want to be here. I want to major in Bitcoin mining. They're not going to have anything for you. So what we're doing is we're trying to get involved in those programs, both for, supporting people as they approach, maybe it's a computer science degree, to have more interest in knowing they're being supported by a Bitcoin mining company. But also we're trying to engage with whether it's communities or things like that. So hopefully there is in 10 years, a Bitcoin program at your local technical college, right? To help people understand how to get into Bitcoin mining. And then of course the next step is internally. Most people that walk through this door, maybe they've worked at a data center, maybe they haven't, but we really believe in training people, in educating them on, not only, how to run a Bitcoin mine and how to maintain miners, but also about the Bitcoin network, why it's important. Hopefully we're creating a whole bunch of, true believers in Bitcoin, yes, as part of this, which we think is, important in the full, stream of things. The other thing we want to do is we want to make sure that a tech that walks in has the opportunity to benefit, fully, not only from like a career path. So, hey, you're entry-level technician. We try and build career paths for everybody that walks in here to hopefully they're running a data center for us in 5 years. Yeah. But also we want to make everybody that walks in an owner in CleanSpark. So we make sure there's the ability to participate in that as a public company. Obviously, there's some upside there, and we want everybody here to experience the upside that we get from Bitcoin, in one way, shape, or form.
Thanks to CleanSpark for opening up their campus to us and giving us a sneak peek at the next level of Bitcoin mining. Go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button and comment on where you want to see us go on location to next. That's all I got. Be blessed. BitBoy out.